In 2023, a pedestrian was thrown into the path of a Cruise Robotaxi. The car braked, then dragged her 20 feet before stopping. That single moment pulled every Cruise Robotaxi off the road. Here's what makes this strange. Cruise was a GM-backed frontrunner, valued near $30 billion, one of two leaders in the whole Robotaxi race. Human drivers crash constantly and no industry shuts down. So why did one accident erase this one? The crash didn't kill Cruise. What happened after did. Start with the night itself. October 2nd, 2023, San Francisco. A human driver in a separate car struck a woman in a crosswalk and threw her sideways, directly into the path of a Cruise Robotaxi coming the other way. The Robotaxi's sensors saw her. It braked hard, but she was already too close and the car still hit her. So far, this is a tragedy no driver could have avoided, human or machine. Now the part that mattered. After the impact, the woman was pinned beneath the car. And here is where the machine made a choice a human never would. The Robotaxi did not sit still and wait for help. Its software decided the safest move was to pull over to the curb, the way it's trained to clear a lane after any stop. So it drove. With her trapped underneath, the car rolled forward about 20 feet at roughly 7 miles per hour, dragging her along the pavement before it finally halted. Think about that distance. 20 feet is the length of a parking space and then some, traveled with a person underneath. She was severely injured. The braking wasn't the failure. Millions of miles of testing had taught the car to stop. What no one had taught it was the one thing any bystander knows on instinct. When someone is under your car, you do not move. That gap is where this story turns. Now the turns. A dragging is horrifying, but it's also an edge case. The rare, catastrophic situation no one scripted for. Companies survive edge cases. What they don't survive is this next part. When Cruise sat down with regulators and reporters to explain the night, it played the footage. According to reporting by Reuters and others, and to findings by state and federal investigators, the video Cruise showed captured the collision, the moment of impact, but stopped short of the pullover. The dragging, the 20 feet with a person underneath, was not in what regulators say they were initially shown. The California DMV and the Federal Safety Agency, NHTSA, later concluded that Cruise had failed to disclose the full video of the pullover and drag. Sit with the difference for a second. If Cruise had walked in and said, "Our car did something terrible, here is the whole tape, here is the flaw, here is our fix," that is a company and agency can keep working with. Painful but survivable. Concealing part of the tape from the very regulator, who decides whether you're allowed on public roads, is a different category of problem. It doesn't just describe one bad night. It tells the regulator they can't trust anything you show them going forward. And once a safety regulator stops believing your evidence, every mile you've ever driven is suspect. That's the moment the crash stopped being the story. Here's how fast trust unwinds. On October 24, 2023, 3 weeks after the crash, the California DMV suspended Cruise's driverless permits. In its order, the DMV called the vehicles an unreasonable risk to public safety and cited misrepresentation of information related to the vehicle's safety. Read that second reason again. Not just that the car was dangerous, that the company had misrepresented. Now watch the dominoes. California is one state. The suspension only touched San Francisco. But Cruise didn't lose one city. Within days, Cruise voluntarily paused all driverless operations nationwide. Every Robotaxi in every market it operated off the road at once. Why would a company ground fleets in cities that never suspended anything? Because the damage wasn't legal, it was reputational. Once your lead regulator publicly says you misrepresented safety information, every other city, every other agency, every rider reads the same headline. Continuing to run cars while that accusation hangs in the air isn't confidence. It's an invitation for the next suspension. So the safer move business-wise was to stop everything and try to rebuild trust from zero. That's the cascade. One jurisdiction acted, trust collapsed, and a nationwide operation folded itself overnight, not because the cars failed everywhere, but because credibility is a single thing you either have or you don't. And Cruise had just lost it. Then the collapse became personal. In November 2023, Cruise co-founder and CEO Kyle Vogt resigned. Soon after, the company laid off roughly 900 employees, about a quarter of its staff. The people who built the thing were walking out the door. But the real verdict came from the owner. General Motors had poured billions into Cruise for years, betting it would own a piece of the driverless future. After the incident, GM slashed that funding. And in December 2024, GM announced it would stop funding the Cruise Robotaxi effort entirely, folding the technology into its own driver assist programs, the systems that help a human drive rather than replace one. Here's the detail that should stop you. By most technical measures, Cruise's engineering was competitive with Waymo, the rival that kept running. Its cars could see, plan, and drive at roughly the same level. This was not a company that lost because its technology couldn't keep up. So what actually sank it? Not the sensors, not the software. A $30 billion company with world-class engineering was undone by a single decision about what to show a regulator. That's the puzzle this whole story has been building toward, and it's time to solve it. So here's the full mechanism. Self-driving cars don't fail on their average day. Cruise drove millions of clean miles. They fail on the rare catastrophic edge case, the one in a million night the software was never taught to handle, like a person pinned underneath. That's the first lesson. Judge these systems on their worst moment, not their average one. But the average versus edge problem is survivable. The deeper lesson is the one that actually ended Cruise. In an industry built entirely on a regulator's permission to use public roads, hiding a failure from that regulator is more lethal to the company than the failure itself. Waymo, the rival with comparable technology, is still on the road today, and its playbook was the opposite. Expand slower, disclose more, treat transparency as the product. Cruise had the engineering to win. It lost on trust. Go back to the hook. One pedestrian, 20 feet, and a single choice to show part of the tape instead of all of it. That choice, not the crash, is what pulled a $30 billion company off the road for good. The crash was survivable. The cover-up was not. That's the whole story in 2 lines, which leaves the harder question hanging over every robotaxi still running tonight. After this, how do you decide whether to trust a car that drives itself and the company watching through its cameras?